Alrighty, we're gonna look into dark themes with Android Q. This was something that was somewhat recently announced. It's gonna be coming with Android Q, and it's gonna be helping us in a lot of different ways. For most important one is that it's gonna be reducing power usages by a significant amount. I believe it was somewhat about 60%. Um, if the app is in dark mode, so we'll be saving a lot of battery there. It's going to be improving visibility, obviously, for users like me. As you can see, I'm using a dark reader. I'm a big fan, so I'm kind of excited about this. And if you're in a low light environment, especially if you're in your bed, it's 2 a.m., you're thinking about your life, why not just do it in dark theme? Why not just do it in the dark theme? And it's pretty easy to implement. There's going to be one that we can obviously go and customize our UI to be beautiful, to be pretty, and then there's also a I'm just hella lazy, Force Dark. We're going to be looking at both of these really quickly, how to implement it, how to implement settings for our users as well to be able to either force dark, force light, either use a system or maybe in a battery settings as well. If you'd like to follow, you can get the code on GitHub. You don't actually have to write everything down from the video. So I'll put a link in the description for that. And without further ado, let's start. First thing I'm going to look at is the Force Dark. This one's actually pretty simple. All we have to do is implement an XML attributes in our app theme. But a couple of gotchas is that you do need to kind of understand that we won't be able to customize stuff as much. So not every page will look good. It will look dark, but it may not look good. And then Force Dark also analyzes the UI architecture and essentially kind of automatically detects on what to invert and what to invert, what to not invert. I believe it might be kind of intensive on the phone itself. So here's our app. At the moment, I'm not using a dark theme. I'm not doing anything. I'm going to build the project just to see what it is with essentially what apps are working on right now. If you have Android 10, Android Q, you're going to have this option up here, dark theme. Right now it's disabled. I'm going to enable it. As you can see, this menu changed, but our app did not. So the first option we're going to look at is just force. All we have to do is tell it to force dark theme and set that thing to true. Now if we rerun this with that attribute set on our teams, we can see that things changed a little bit. And if we turn it off, it goes back to white. If we turn it on, it goes back to black. That's about it for force theme or force dark. Use it with care. And then there's the other option that we can customize it a little bit. We first have to start by using the day and night theme. That will be under app combat, and I believe this is the recommended way. There's a different couple of ways you could do, but this is where they're mostly pointing at. If we use day and night, we can actually rerun this again, but nothing should actually change at the moment. Right, so there's our application. Here's our template and stuff. Let's go ahead and quickly look at some of the customization that was done to make this happen. But this is the first part. If you're going to do this, you got to make sure that your theme is set to day night. Another part, I will go through Gradle later. It's not important for now. Let's go ahead in our XML. So you notice that the first one, it says this is always a white text because it will always be a white text. That doesn't look good. So kind of a do not do kind of situation is to never use or never assume that the text will always be white. Never assume that a background will always be white. So try and avoid situations like this. The second text view that we have doesn't actually have any text color attributes assigned to it, which means that it will be the kind of a darkish gray on white and dark, which kind of looks okay in both, but that's not what we want, I feel like. We can do better. The third way is we can actually assign text colors. So in the third text view that we have here, it's either green if it's white, or it's either, or it's going to be red. That's not blue, that needs to be red. All right. It's going to be green or blue based on if the dark theme is on or off. Okay. And the way you're going to do that is by assigning color. But in this case, we're going to have to do colors. One is that we would just assign a color as we would do regularly with how we're doing it right now. But we also have this new XML where it has the night attribute assigned to it. So if we're going to have a color that basically changes based on if it's light or dark, we're going to need to declare it on both files. So in this case, I have green or red with this hex, which is kind of bluish. And in the night file, I also have green or red with this hex file, which is reddish. So make sure if you go to your resources, values, colors, you're going to need to have both of these to be able to differentiate between one or the other. There's our color. I performed sort of the same thing with the icons, so there's not much there. Don't do the same thing with the icons. Don't make sure your icons are not always white. You can use some provided resources. I believe I did it for the smiley face icon. Yeah, so one of them is color control normal. It will look kind of blackish on white, grayish when in dark mode, so it will kind of change. But if you want more customization, then again you're gonna have to provide it with some attribute. In this case, I'm just giving it the same green or red tint to that image, which will make it go blue or red. Okay, there's our customization, and then being able to allowing the user to either use the system settings or battery, or forcing the application to either be dark or light. So these are the options that can be given to the user, and that's usually the recommended way. So you should try and avoid just setting the app to dark. If you can provide an option to the user, something like that. In this case, I'm just using a provided API called set default night mode, and that's coming from the I believe app delegate, app combat delegate. So use that to change. If you're on always light, that means if you're not in dark mode or are in dark mode, it will always be light. If you are in dark mode and you turn this on and off, then it will not change again. But if you follow the system and you turn this on and off, then it will just switch based on what the system has. So you would typically want to provide this as a setting to the user. That pretty much sums it up. A couple of things I'd like to also mention is that since this is in beta, the files are still kind of updating. One thing to watch out for is that if you're using an older version than 1.10, such as 1.0.1, there's a couple of bugs. There's a couple of places where it doesn't update the UI automatically. So I'm going to sync it. I'm going to rebuild it. Come up, come on. And okay. So now, since we are in dark theme and I select always light, notice that it doesn't actually change. So I need to actually leave the app and come back in and it will update. That did not happen with 1.1.0. So if you're seeing some weirdness, know that this is still in beta, and but also make sure that you're using the latest version. Other than that, that should sum it up. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe if this was helpful.